Thank you for joining us today for the Conform to Christ podcast, where we seek to engage the mind, affect the heart, and call people to follow Christ. I'm Jay Jones, and I am here with George Mays, and it is Text Driven Tuesday time. So if you have your Bible, you want to grab your Bible and take it and open to Hebrews. We're back in Hebrews chapter 12, and today we're covering verses 4 through 11 on a sermon that George preached with the main theme of having the right perspective and understanding of suffering. Very good. So, George, let me ask you. I got my glasses on, and I kind of need them. I've noticed more and more. Do they make me have buggy eyes?
Buggy eyes?
Yeah, do they look buggy?
No, I don't think so.
All right.
So
it's just me. It's just me. Like big bug eyes.
I don't think so.
All right.
Bug eyes?
Yeah.
No.
All right. Well, I mean, you look at yourself in the mirror, one way your whole life, and then next thing you know, you got glasses.
Well, now I'm going to have to look for it, Jay. I didn't have anything, and I can't connect my phone, so I'm going to have to send it. If I find it, I'll have to send it to your messenger. But no, I don't think that your glasses make you look.
Well, you can save it for Free for All Friday.
Well, we're talking about it right now, so
Okay.
but I probably won't be able to find it. So don't wait on my don't wait on me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so George, it seemed a little bit more anxious. I don't know if that's the right word about this sermon. A little bit worried about this sermon. So before we jump in, maybe just talk to us about that.
Just share my my personal anxieties here on the podcast for everyone. Yeah. This where to begin? This is this passage itself is not really that difficult, and my outline was it came pretty easily.
Okay.
And we'll get to it when we're talking about discipline here in verses 5 through really 9, I guess, 9 and 10. And as I was studying, I was just thinking about people that haven't had good dads.
Yeah.
Like it's all about how God disciplines his children,
Mm-hmm.
and he disciplines them because he loves them. Some of the language that's used here is pretty harsh. I mean, verse 6, the Lord disciplines the one he loves and chastises. The ESV kind of makes it a little bit nicer.
Uh-huh.
It's the word for whip. And what the King James has scourge.
Huh.
He scourgeth every son whom he receives. And I was just thinking, I had it. My dad's great. What if I had a dad that abused me growing up?
So that's the what you're worried about.
That's kind of what I was. Well, it wasn't. It was, how can I communicate this in a way that it brings everyone in?
Yeah.
And they understand. They because I think that the temptation is to take our personal experiences and try to interpret the Bible through that.
Yeah.
So if you didn't have a good dad, or a dad who didn't discipline you lovingly, or even was abusive, like how would I come to this? And well, here's God, and he disciplines, and he scourges. he whips those whom he receives. So I was just trying to think, how can I communicate this in a way that shows that God is like, don't try to place your bad experiences on God,
right,
and try to interpret the passage and say, well, God's because you hear unbelievers who talk about penal substitutionary atonement like child abuse.
right.
Like that is a criticism of penal substitutionary atonement. that God is a bad father who abuses his son and kills him. And we live in a culture where abuse is rampant. Like there's a lot of bad dads. There's a lot of bad parents. And so wanted to make sure that the way that we're thinking about God is biblical and recognizing what the Bible says is true about God and not trying to interpret it based on my bad experiences.
There's also this kind of element to it as well, I think. There's kind of a movement, an anti-spanking movement.
There is.
So like maybe a good translation into our time would be that he spanks every son whom he receives. An anti-spanking movement led primarily by, I would say, moms, right? That to discipline kids, you do not need to spank your children. In fact, to spank your children in any way in this modern movement is kind of
it's abuse.
Synonymous with abuse.
Yeah, it's abuse. Yeah.
So there's that to work through as well.
Yeah. And there's also the way that people talk about abuse is, well, I'm doing this because I love you.
Oh yeah. I've heard that.
That sounds like this, right? So we want to come to the text. We want to come to the text and not water it down. We want to say what the Bible says, but we don't want to take the actions of wicked people and say, well, God's just like them, or I can't, like, this doesn't apply to me because I didn't have a good dad, or you know. So that was the main pressure that I was feeling, is trying to make sure that I was communicating this in a way that wasn't misunderstood.
Right.
And it's really easy to fail in that.
Right.
You know, thankfully I had some people that came up and said that was really helpful. The way that you communicated it. So any weakness that was in the sermon on was my fault. If I didn't communicate something well, that was on me. But we do want to come to the Bible as God's perfect word. There's no weakness in this. So the way that God's discipline is described here is the way that we need to approach it. We need to come to it and say, this is true, and it doesn't matter what my experiences have been in the past. This is true. And God really does love us, and because he loves us, he does discipline us. And it's, man, I read I think I read all the passages on discipline from Proverbs in the sermon, and it focuses on physical pain, physical discipline, like using a rod.
Right.
So that was the main thing that I was really.
Did you get spanked as a kid?
Oh yeah. Oh,
you did?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Probably not as much as I deserved.
Did you have to go outside and pick out your own
I
switch?
did not have to pick out my own switch because my mom had to do that, and she didn't want that to be my experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like a psychological
Yeah.
deal beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she didn't want to do that to us. So that was the main part. The other part is I kind of went back and forth between 3 points and 4 points, and I actually had only 3 points, but that last point was really long, and I was like, I think they're going to check out if there's not another hook for them to hang their thoughts on. So I divided them.
Yeah, having the points helps you to have a progression.
Yeah.
Like if you're listening, it helps the listener to. Yeah. There's momentum gained.
So my last point is that your suffering has meaning, and that was the third point.
Okay.
Because God disciplines us for our good.
Yeah.
But then it was really long, and so I didn't want to lose people, so I split it to focus on God's discipline. Our suffering is actually God disciplining us because he loves us. And then another point, that your suffering has meaning.
Right. So where this fits kind of in this context of where we are in Hebrews, in this letter is written to people experiencing suffering, and they're facing like a tremendous pressure to try to alleviate their own suffering by apostatizing and,
Right.
and leaving Christianity.
Mhm.
I think very relevant,
Yeah.
timelessly relevant for people who are experiencing severe suffering all throughout the world. But we have this weird kind of thing going on in America, don't we? You brought it up, called deconstruction,
Mhm.
where there are a lot of reasons given for that. But what I find to be interesting, I saw someone talking about this online, is that you don't really see people deconstructing. Deconstruction can be a good thing, right? Like perhaps maybe you grew up in a church that wasn't very biblical,
Mhm.
maybe had a lot of fundamentalist tendencies that are based in tradition and not really based in the Bible.
Mhm.
You know, like maybe women can't wear pants like
Yeah.
ever. Um, you know, if you had any type of tobacco or alcohol, you were for sure sinning and going to hell. So there are a lot of things that could be deconstructed
Right.
to become more biblical. So we're leaving those things to become more
Yeah. I
biblical.
mean, we probably both deconstructed things. I definitely deconstructed my eschatology and examined it with scripture and
Right.
came away with a different eschatology. I mean,
Yeah.
another word for that would just be reforming.
Reforming. Reforming yourself after the scriptures. Yeah. That's not really what we see. Deconstruction today kind of, I think it comes from social and cultural pressures that are put on pretty heavy.
Mhm. And just talking about reforming, I think we need to stop using the term deconstructing. Like
Right.
Christians need to stop using that term because it's being used by people who are leaving the faith
Right.
as like this logical, well, I examined everything and I just kind of tore it down brick by brick. They're apostatizing.
Yeah.
use the biblical language. Like they're falling away.
Well, a lot of times,
That's what it is.
well, like I said, a lot of times it comes because of a lot of people. Well, the trend is deconstructing, and then surprise! Now I don't think
I'm not Christian anymore.
any of these sexual sins
Yeah.
are actual sexual sins
Right.
anymore. See, a lot of times that's what it's based in.
Oh yeah.
In I think a desire to indulge in one's own lust, the lust of the flesh. But it could also be that people just get tired of having the world against them.
Mhm.
So I'm holding the line, but the pressure becomes too much. I'm tired of not being accepted by the broader culture. I'm tired of maybe not having a platform anymore. Like I don't have a platform
Right.
like I could have if I just, would deconstruct a little bit.
Uh-huh.
And so people feeling the pressure, or perhaps, their children, we've talked about this before, children,
yeah.
like their children go one way.
Yep.
The next thing you know, the parents follow, they deconstruct.
Yep.
And they follow because they have to choose now between
Right.
what I have said that I believe, and now where my children have gone. And a lot
Right.
of times people choose their children.
Mhm. Yeah.
So very, very relevant. I think we do experience a degree of suffering in that regard, but it's very. I mean, the first point, as we'll get into,
Yeah.
like we haven't shed our blood.
Right.
Like so, we need to have a right perspective.
Yeah.
Right. Isn't that was the whole point of your sermon? Is this is to give us a right perspective on our suffering.
Yeah.
And so your outline was four things.
They're suffering. They're experiencing the hardships and the persecution. They're being ostracized. And I mean, we look at the end of chapter 10, and some of them have been publicly maligned, and some have been thrown into prison, and they've had their property confiscated, and so they've experienced this because they're Christians, right? And so now they're being tempted because persecution it's amping up again,
Right.
and they're being tempted to leave. And so he's trying to tell them, look, don't just focus on the pain, that like it's some kind of meaningless event that's happening to you.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually something good coming. There's something that this actually is a good thing because God is doing something in this suffering.
Right.
And so if you have this perspective, then you actually can endure and persevere through whatever the opposition is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good.
And we need that because it is amping up in America. I mean, we kind of act like this is just the way of Christianity, is the American experience,
Mm-hmm.
where it's been pretty much accepted, and as long as you don't rock the boat, you can practice Christianity all you want. But
Right.
that's not what is. I mean, you don't have to be a prophet to see where things are going in America.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not it's not enough for you to, well, if you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. It's
Mhm.
you have to affirm and celebrate this stuff with us,
Sure.
or you're a bigot, you're a homophobe, whatever.
Right. 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 You remember when all of this started? People are like, you always Christians with your slippery slopes, whatever. And
Yeah.
we quickly went from we just want to get married, leave us alone, to
Yeah.
fully embrace this or we'll destroy your life.
Yeah.
And not only that, you need to now accept transgenderism.
Right.
And I just read, there was an article, and I thought it was a joke, but it wasn't this was not a joke. This was not one of these sites,
Uh-huh.
like I thought it was like a Babylon Bee thing,
Yeah.
but it was for Zooey's. You know about Zooey's?
Yeah.
And so they made their same the case that this article was making was, look, the reason you should accept Zooey or zoophilia is because the same arguments you used to make against homosexuality, you're making the same arguments here against
Mhm.
Zooey. And they walked step by step, and they, if you're looking at it from just a purely secular perspective, they appear to be the same arguments, right?
Yeah.
It's unnatural,
Mhm.
things like this, whatever.
Right.
But that's where we are. We
Oh,
called
yeah.
it a long time ago. Like, this is the slippery slope. Where
It's
we're
not even
headed. And
it's not even a slippery slope. It was just a cliff.
yeah, yeah. It's and of course now people are talking about first thing that happens is they kind of change the words and
Right.
control the language. So now
Mhm.
pedophilia is being talked about not as
Right.
the grotesque evil that it is, but
Yeah.
something that you can look at this person and say, well, they're
Well, it started all the way back with homosexuality.
mm-hmm.
It wasn't or sodomy. I mean, sodomy was like the usual language,
Right,
but now it's gay.
right,
So that you change it, you change the term, make it sound better,
uh-huh.
right? And then it just slowly
right.
inch towards full on acceptance.
Yeah. So that's the way the pressure comes here, and of course, the movement has all of the backing of all of the people that are pulling all the levers of influence and power
Right.
of society. So a lot of people will that pressure's too much. They
Yep.
can't take not having friends,
Mhm.
not being invited anymore to things. I mean, we know people in our church that have lost best friends over this.
Yeah.
For, I've been your best friend your whole life.
Yep.
And because I won't, participate in your wedding, you're defriending me, not on Facebook, but in real life,
Mhm. Yep.
And so this pressure, that's kind of how we experience the pressure, but it's worse in a lot of places for Christians, down to their physical danger, even at the cost of losing their life. And this is written. The author of Hebrews writes this about having this right perspective on suffering. And you have 4 points that we'll move through. They're kind of things to remember.
Mhm.
I believe you said it
And
like this.
And I got that from verse 5.
Yeah.
And
You mean you got your outline from the Bible?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I got that main,
Yeah.
like how I framed the points from verse 5.
Okay.
So you want me to read it so we can?
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
I can talk
Let's
about.
read it.
Then I can talk about.
I've got it.
How
I've got it here. We can throw it on the screen.
I can talk about how I got that from verse 5. How that kind of framed my outline.
Okay. There it is.
All right. So Hebrews chapter 12, verses 4 through 11. In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. And have you forgotten the exhortation that addresses you as sons? My son, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, nor be weary when reproved by him. For the Lord disciplines the one he loves and chastises every son whom he receives. It is for discipline that you have to endure. God is treating you as sons. For what son is there whom his father does not discipline? If you are left without discipline, in which all have participated, then you are illegitimate children and not sons. Besides this, we have had earthly fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them. Shall we not much more be subject to the Father of spirits and live? For they disciplined us for a short time, as it seemed best to them, but he disciplines us for our good, that we may share his holiness. For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it.
All right. Very good.
So, verse 5, the ESV translates it as a rhetorical question, and have you forgotten?
Mm-hmm.
But the grammar of the Greek, it could be an indicative. It could be a statement. You have forgotten. And I think that just in the context of the entire book, the way that he's addressed them throughout, he's acting as if they have. So I don't think that he's asking this rhetorical question. I think it'd be more pointed if we were to just see it in the light of the way that he's talking to them in the entire book. The way that they're acting is as if they have, and so he's saying, "You have forgotten." And so that's how I framed my entire outline. If they've forgotten in the first century, then we definitely in 21st century America have forgotten. And so the points are, these are things you need to remember.
Yeah.
Because we've probably forgotten also.
And that's your outline.
Yeah.
So grab your Bible, follow along. 4 things to remember so that you can maintain a proper perspective on suffering. Again, that's 4 things to remember so that you can maintain a proper perspective on suffering. And your first thing that we need to remember is that the saints have always suffered.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about that.
Yep. Yeah. In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood.
Okay. All right. So, the saints through history, you could walk through the Bible and see from the beginning of the Bible to now for the Hebrews, this has been the reality of saints in the Bible.
Yeah.
That they have experienced suffering. This is not something that when you come into covenant with God, whether in the old covenant, we can especially see that there, but also in the new covenant, which we say is a new covenant and better and superior. The new covenant saints suffer as well.
Right. It goes this is the point of chapter 11, is to present this great cloud of witnesses. And who does he start with? He starts with Abel.
Right.
What happens to Abel?
Yeah.
He's murdered by his brother. And he even says that though he's died, he still speaks. And as we get into in the chapter 12, he's going to be talking, or further in the chapter 12 in a couple of weeks, we'll see that we have a blood that's better than the blood of Abel. And so we have this testimony of Abel. We looked at the end of chapter 11 with those that were tortured, and they were stoned, and they were sawn in two. They were killed with the sword. These are the
wild beasts.
Yeah, they're the wild beast. Even in the time that he's writing this, some of the apostles have probably died by now. Definitely Christians have. They know about the stoning of Stephen, and there's just all of these examples of saints in the Old Testament and now into the church age that have shed their blood.
Yeah.
And they lived a life of faith. They endured. And so what he's telling them is, put your suffering in perspective. You haven't died yet. you haven't shed your blood.
You mean that's something that God may ask us to do?
Yeah. Yeah. This is the experience of believers for all of history. We are so quick to just kind of assume that this is normal in America.
Liberals are going to be in a real conundrum with us in the future, right? Because they'll want to do it, but their liberalism won't allow them to put us to death, right? So they'll just have to create a nice concentration camp to throw us all in.
You watch the if you watch videos of these pride parades and see even the vitriol of people when these Christians will stand outside of abortion clinics or just on street corners and just preach the gospel, and you see the vitriol. Right. I think the liberals will get over their
Their anti-death penalty
their
stuff.
death penalty stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I've seen videos that's very clear. If they could kill that person right then, they would.
Right.
Because a lot of this is just demonic,
Mm-hmm.
especially the abortion stuff. It's demonic.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of these people, if they could kill the Christian that's standing there telling them not to kill babies, I think that person would.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the people that are okay with killing babies, I think they're going to be okay with killing Christians.
Yeah.
I think they'll get over it
Right.
because we'll be subhuman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But we just act like the American experience is the common experience, and we forget that we're the weird ones. Like we're strange.
Right.
The freedoms that we have here in America, that's weird.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the common experience for Christians around the world for most of church history.
Right.
I mean, even as we speak, there are probably Christians in some of these countries who are shedding their blood.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And that's good to have this proper perspective for us because right now, currently, I think maybe the worst thing that could happen to you would be to lose your job. That would be pretty bad, right? Like now
Yeah,
you're wondering, like, how am I going to take care of my family?
yeah,
How am I going to provide for my children? That would be a very bad thing, and that's a reality,
yes,
I think,
Oh,
today.
and he's not downplaying their suffering. He says that in your struggle
Right.
against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding blood. They are suffering. He's not downplaying it. He's just putting it into perspective. And I think a lot of people, a lot of the pushback that Christians have received, and some of it's probably warranted because some Christians can have like a martyr complex and they like wear their suffering on their sleeve. It does hurt when you're rejected for being a Christian here in America.
Right.
When a friend unfriends you, or when family members ostracize you, or you're the weird person at work, or you lose your job, or whatever. I mean, you're the butt of someone's joke at school. That is persecution.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back to Matthew chapter 5, when Jesus says, "Blessed are you when people revile you and they say all kinds of evil things about you," like he focuses on verbal persecution.
Right.
So verbal persecution is persecution.
Mm-hmm.
And it can really hurt, but we can put that persecution in perspective with the sufferings of other saints and realize we haven't suffered that much.
Right.
And that's the kind of suffering that we should expect. We should expect to be verbally maligned by the culture.
Yeah.
Like if you're watching a TV show and they make some kind of joke about Christianity that they would never make about like Islam, you should be like, that's to be expected. They hate us.
Yeah.
That's what the Bible tells us to expect. I mean,
Right.
Peter writes in 1 Peter chapter 4, don't be surprised at the fiery trials that are coming upon you as if something strange were happening to you.
Right.
A lot of Christians have forgotten that verse. And they're shocked when people treat Christians as the butt of the joke.
Right.
That is the Christian experience. And Jesus shed his own blood.
Mm-hmm.
Like we follow a crucified Messiah. What do you think is going to happen to you?
Right.
You're expecting to be treated with a nice pat on the head?
Yeah.
Like we should expect to suffer. And if it does come to that point, and I think we'll see it in America probably a lot sooner than we might have expected, where we are called upon to shed our blood.
Right.
That is what the Christian life is.
Yeah. True. Yes. Very, very good. Okay. This is point one. So we keep this in perspective. We haven't resisted yet to the point of shedding our blood, but also second thing to remember that God is sovereign over your suffering. This may be one that is difficult for people maybe they're more of a recent listener to the podcast. But as you pointed out, we've talked about this at great length, the sovereignty of God over all suffering. And I like the way you kind of brought it up and set it up. This is not something he argues for to try to make the case that God is sovereign, right? He's
Right.
simply just assuming
Yeah,
the reality.
He just acts like it's common knowledge, and
Right.
he quotes from the Old Testament. He's not even
Uh-huh.
he's not even writing something new. He's quoting Proverbs chapter 3,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not like he said it. He's not arguing for it. He's just assuming it. Like
Right.
it just is this assumption that the sufferings that they're experiencing are from God.
Yeah, and that may be hard for people to grasp. I mean, especially this is something better to nail down before you enter into suffering,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Than to try to nail it down when you're in the midst of it.
Right.
That all of the things that happen to the Christian in their life are ordained by God.
Yeah.
Even the bad things that we experience.
Yeah, and you can see it in verses 5 and 6, where he quotes Proverbs chapter 3. He says, "My son, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, nor be weary when he is when reproved by him. For the Lord disciplines the one he loves and chastises every son whom he receives." In the context of what he's saying in this passage, the discipline he's talking about is the suffering.
Mm-hmm.
It is the hostility that they're experiencing that is tempting them to leave the faith. And what he's saying as he quotes this passage from the Old Testament that he still is viewing as authoritative and relevant for the Christian church is that these things are actually from God, that he's disciplining them, that he's reproving them, that he's chastising them. So he just it's just you could easily just pass over it because it's so easily assumed here in the passage by the author of Hebrews.
Right.
And he's assuming that that his readers are going to understand it too. This wasn't something controversial. That this suffering comes from God.
Yeah.
But here in America and in the 21st century, this splits churches. What we're saying here that he's just assuming are things that will be called demonic for holding.
And we will get into this more in your last point, but maybe one of the most famous verses in this regard is in Romans chapter 8, verses 28 through and 29. But that all things work together for our good, for those who love God or are called according to his purpose.
Right.
And the good, right, you can get this verse wrong when you impose upon it a worldly idea of what good is.
Yeah.
So we think that means no suffering. We think that means financial prosperity. We think that means perfect families, perfect children, this great life. But this is not the reason for that verse.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Right.
to tell us that even the terrible things that happen to us in life, that they're not an accident.
Yeah.
That God is working those things, has ordained them, and is working in our life through them to conform us into the image of his Son. That's verse 29.
Yep.
And so if you don't have this ideal as the greatest good in my life is to become like Jesus, then you will never be satisfied by this answer. Or you won't have the right understanding of your sufferings because you're seeing something else as a greater good for you. Right. Because you can't see the full picture. You can't see how good it is to. I don't want to jump too much into this because you covered it in your last point. But think of the alternative. The alternative of God being sovereign over our sufferings and ordaining them for our good is an absolute nightmare.
If all things are working for good and that God is conforming us to the image of Christ, then he has to be sovereign over it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you've got this picture of God who's just trying to pick up the pieces
That's a
frantically.
Yeah, that's a nightmare scenario.
As bad things are happening, God's trying, all right, well, how can I make this work for good?
There's a very popular book that I read a while back on suffering. It was like a New York Times bestseller written by a Jewish man. I believe he's a rabbi. and kind of what got him down this trail, I think, was the death of his son. But he jettisoned the entire idea that God was sovereign and more like God's along for the ride.
Right.
Right. He's here with us in our suffering,
Uh-huh.
and he is present. I don't really know how this is a comfort for people
It's like
because
that's like the Jewish version of process theology,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, the alternative to God being sovereign is an absolute nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
It's meaningless suffering. It's chaos. Right? It's not just chaos in like random acts in the universe that accidents happen, but it's chaos in this sense too, that there are evil and demonic forces. There is actually a real enemy, a prince of the power of the air, and if God isn't sovereign over what He can do,
Uh-huh.
because I mean, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Like we
You're going to get to, this dualism where God and the devil are in this like
yeah, they're in a
they're
competition
in
with
competition. They're fighting with each other, and it's a tug of war. And sometimes God wins, and sometimes
You end
the
up with
devil
like
wins,
a.
and it's like it's just back and forth. And
It'd be interesting to see the connection between like Zoroastrianism, the ancient belief that emerged out of Assyria. Of course, Assyria, Nineveh. Here we go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're really wanting to dive down the hole this morning, aren't you?
But they had this real firm dualism
Yep.
of good and evil, and it's
Uh-huh.
almost like they're matched equally. But you can
I
help.
think that's the way a lot of people, even professing Christians, just view the world.
Yeah,
They view it as it's equal sides,
right.
light and dark, and well, God's doing His best.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's the way that a lot of people just view the world.
Yeah, you brought up two big ones from the Old Testament, Joseph, and at the end there, when Joseph of the Joseph story,
Mm-hmm.
Joseph's brothers are going to come to him, and their father has died, and they think now that our father has died, Joseph's going to take his revenge on us.
Payback time.
Yeah, we're gonna get what's rightfully coming because justice, right? And
Uh-huh.
and Joseph has the means and the power to
Yeah,
mete out that
definitely.
justice. And so they go and confess.
Yep.
And what he says is often twisted. When he says to them is, "You meant it for evil."
And that's important.
It is important.
And this was another place where I was like, I got to get this right. So I sent it to you, and you responded and told me to add a little bit,
Right.
to make it stronger.
Yeah.
Right? That Joseph's brothers are responsible.
Uh-huh.
Like God didn't make them do this; they did this of their own volition.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
So they confess it. We did it. We sinned. Joseph acknowledges their responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
You meant it. Like you were evil, and you're the one that sold me into slavery. You did it. But God is sovereign over their actions.
Yeah, God meant it for
Right.
good. So there's this kind of parallelism that's there.
Yeah.
You meant it for evil. God meant it for good.
Right.
There are two wills at play.
Yes.
Always. There's the human will,
Mm-hmm.
and the intention of that human will was evil.
Right.
But God's will and His intention was good.
Right.
And it's not that, and I've heard many, many preachers and commentators
Yep.
incorrectly say it's like God takes lemons and makes lemonade.
Right.
Terrible. It's actually terrible. That is not what it means at all.
Right.
It means that God meant it. God willed it for good.
We see this explicitly in Psalm 105.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not the only place where this idea behind Joseph's story is spoken about in the same way.
Right.
Psalm 105, when God summoned a famine in the land, that's also God's sovereignty. Like the famine, which people would say that's bad. God did it. He's the one who sent it.
That's what kicked the
Right.
whole story into
Right? He's the one who sent it.
Yeah.
This is the whole thing, the whole scenario.
Uh-huh.
It's God's plan and purpose.
Right.
Right. And the purpose is to get Jacob's family down into Egypt,
Right.
right? Which is something else that's bad that's going to happen. They're
Mm-hmm.
going to end up as slaves, right? But it's all God's purpose. When God summoned a famine on the land and broke all supply of bread, God, had sent a man ahead of them, Joseph, who was sold as a slave. So he was sold as a slave. That's human responsibility. But I love the way that the psalmist talks about it. God had sent Joseph. The way that it's described as God sending Joseph like he's some kind of emissary.
Right.
And yet, how did he get there? He was sold into slavery, but it was God who did it. And his feet were hurt with fetters. His neck was put in a collar of iron until what he had said came to pass. The word of the Lord tested him.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all the bad things that happened to Joseph came from God's sovereign hand.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love Ruth. This is a story of Ruth.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that we often forget about is in this story is the whole thing that starts it is suffering.
Right.
There's a famine.
Uh-huh.
Right. Then.
And there's a lot of stuff going on.
Oh yeah.
There. I mean, in the time of the Judges,
Uh-huh.
and you've got the whole book of Judges to think about.
Yeah.
Like all the stuff that's going on. Why is there a famine in the land?
Yeah. Right.
Right. It's because they've rebelled, and it's all. I mean, it's just dominoes. If this didn't happen, this wouldn't happen, and this wouldn't happen, and this wouldn't happen, and then by the end of the book, Jesus isn't born.
Right. That's where you
Yeah.
end up.
Yeah.
But go through Naomi's perspective. What I love to do is to try to put yourself in her shoes, because her husband dies, both her sons die. She's left in the most destitute position you can be in.
Right.
The only options she has, literally, in many of the background material I read, is for her to become a prostitute, so she doesn't starve to death.
Right.
Or to try to go back to her own land, and maybe there'll be a redeemer there. And so she goes back. Of course, we know how the story unfolds, that God, through Ruth, this Moabite, which is completely like this story can only be written by God. And we get to the end of the story. A baby is born. We get the insider info, right? This is King David's great-grandfather and great-grandfather, correct? Yes. And she doesn't know any of this, and she dies. So this woman dies, famine, death of a husband, death of her two sons, and she gets to be redeemed through this Moabitess. She sees a baby, but she doesn't know who this baby is. She doesn't know King David will come from him. She doesn't know the Messiah will come from him.
Yeah.
So she doesn't get answers to all of the suffering she's endured.
And we can dissect this story and just think about all of the randomness of the story, because there's two women. There's two daughter-in-laws, right?
You're right.
There's Orpah, who goes back, and there's Ruth. Was it just blind luck that one of these sons married someone that would go back with her? Like Ruth could have gone back to her father's house too. And I mean, just think of all the little decisions that have to go into it. Is this all just chance? Is it just a roll of the dice?
Right.
And it just worked out? If God's not meticulously sovereign in this story, if even one of these decisions goes awry, it all falls apart.
Yeah, no Messiah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing to think about the level of God's sovereignty over these what we would say random occurrences in life.
Yep.
But as we see, there's no randomness, there's no meaningless, there's no chance. And the ultimate example of seeing suffering and evil under the sovereignty of God is Jesus,
Right.
the cross.
Yeah.
You have Psalm 2 being played out on the stage of the world's powers, not just the Jews, but the world's powers against Christ. And these people, the first sermons that were preached is, you killed the Messiah.
Yeah.
And it's you. You did it. You sinned by killing the author
of
life. You
Yeah.
killed him.
Yeah.
This is God's predetermined
and you
plan.
did everything that God had determined for you to do.
Right.
Yeah. What is it in first? Where is it? It's in Acts. that though they have the scriptures, they fulfilled them.
Right.
Like, even though the Bible says this is what's going to happen, they did it.
Yeah.
They did it anyway.
And so we can, I think about this in our own life too. Okay. We look back at these moments of suffering.
This is just stuff that happened in the Bible. Like,
Right.
this is abstract. This happened to someone else. This has direct relevance for us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we are not immune to these things, right? Suffering happens. People will die in your life, and sometimes people will die young. Sometimes marriages will fail, not because of anything, that either party has done, but because someone dies. These are terrible things, that life-altering things. Are we to think they're accidents?
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't live. Life would be unlivable to me if what we're saying here were not true. I don't know how you could live.
Right.
It's pure chaos. It's meaninglessness, randomness.
A lot of people suffer from anxiety. I was suffering from it yesterday.
Yeah.
All right. One of the things that helped me was God's sovereignty. Like, thinking about God's sovereignty. If God is sovereign, that kills worry. But if God's not sovereign, and the next thing that happens may just be bad luck.
You brought up what Jesus said to his disciples.
Yeah.
So let's maybe share that with us.
Matthew chapter 10.
Yes.
Yeah. Do not fear those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. This is in the middle of him sending his disciples out to the cities in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
So don't fear them, even though they can kill you. Don't fear them. Fear God. Fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny, and not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father? But even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear not, therefore, you are of more value than many sparrows. So sparrows, which were like the most worthless of birds, they're like the cheapest.
Yeah.
Not one of them dies apart from God.
Mm-hmm.
Not a single hair from your head will fall apart from God's sovereignty. They're all numbered. That's meticulous sovereignty.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about things that we don't really think about. Like, how many hairs fall from your head every day?
Right.
And we don't even think about it.
Here's what I find to be interesting about this whole topic. Like, I'll set it up like this. Sproul made this comment where he said, "There's not one rogue molecule in the universe."
Right.
And that's
in the universe.
right. Right. In the universe, there's not one rogue molecule. Just think if there were rogue molecules.
Yeah.
Like, there could be atomic explosions just happening randomly, right?
Yeah.
We don't see that, though. And this, of course, this kind of determinism that seems to be locked into the universe is observed by scientists, right? So you even will have, I think, the most logical thinking atheists will say that free will is an illusion, because they're seeing the universe, they're looking at it as purely an interaction of physical laws, and they acknowledge these laws, right? They can't take the next step to see that there is someone behind all of these laws. Right. And so they see this. There aren't random nuclear explosions happening everywhere. It seems to be that there is this type of determinism that's built in, right? There is cause and effect. You don't have effects without causes. And if you had all knowledge, literally, if you had infinite knowledge, you could look at every molecule in the universe and know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Of course, we can't, because we don't have that type of knowledge, not even close. But they recognize this. And so they're seeing something true about reality that can't possibly be otherwise. They're just not seeing that the universe is governed by a sovereign creator, right? this isn't teaching that we're puppets on strings, though. So we have like they'll say free will is an illusion. We can say free will is not an illusion. That all people have moral agency. We have moral agency.
Right.
So we aren't actually even a slave to the chemicals that are going on in our brain, which is
Right.
what they believe.
Yeah.
Right. We are slaves to the and they can't even think otherwise. This is what's amazing to think about this. In their view, they could not think otherwise and believe otherwise than they believe, but nor could the Christian.
Yeah.
The Christian could not ever believe otherwise than he believes because they're just slaves to the chemical reactions going on. But we don't believe that because we have revelation given by the person who created these laws, and he's told us that he's created us as morally free agents.
Right.
And that's an important distinction that we can make. And not only is the person who gave us the moral free agency, he's good.
Yeah.
Because he could have been, right? He could have been just like a weird, sinister dictator who created a world because he likes suffering. But we don't see that in the Bible either.
Right.
We see that God is good and that any of the corruption or sin or evil that we see, the bad things that we see in the world, all have their root and their trace to humanity, that we rebelled against our Creator. And that sin spread like throwing a rock in a pond,
Right.
and these waves just go out through
Yeah.
the fabric of all of space-time.
Right. But all within God's
Sovereign plan.
sovereign decree, right?
Right.
Like for the ultimate good, which is the death, resurrection, and glorification
Right.
of Christ.
Yeah, I mean, all things were created by him and for him.
Right.
If you don't believe that, if you don't believe this universe exists so the cross of Christ can happen, the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ can happen,
Yeah.
you're never going to get your mind around this problem of pain and suffering and evil.
Yeah.
And if you can't see that through that this is the best, this wouldn't, here's just kind of, I've told you before what I believe about this. God, being who he is, would only create the best possible universe. And this is the one, because this is the one that exists. And this is the one where the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ happens
Right.
to achieve maximal glory for God. And I believe maximal glory and joy
Right.
for the people of God.
Yes.
Yep. And what we can take comfort in is knowing that our God took on human flesh and experienced pain and suffering and went before us all the way up to death on a cross in his obedience. And it's through that as well, likewise, that he is making us like Christ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the alternative, you've got a couple alternatives that just are not intellectually satisfying, nor are they spiritually satisfying. One, pure chaos.
Yep.
Randomness, meaninglessness. That's just not livable.
Yeah.
And then you've got atheism, which says you don't have any free will at all.
Yeah.
Of any kind. And neither one of those are good.
Yeah.
And then you have
And atheism is still meaningless.
right.
That's, that's still
Well, at the end of the day,
like
yeah.
your suffering is meaningless. It's just nature red in tooth and claw.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
deal with it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
But that's not what we see, and we'll get to that in just a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can, if you are about to be thrown out of your family, and you're an early Christian receiving this letter, you're about to be thrown out of the synagogue, lose your family, lose your business. And here's your choice. Leave Christ, go back to the old ways, or listen to what the author is saying and understand that this isn't a surprise.
Right.
That God has ordained this for you.
Yeah.
And it will ultimately be for your good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we can see it. We don't have to guess at this. We can see it through Hebrews chapter 11. You go back to the stories of these saints and see how God has just been sovereignly ordaining the things that happen in their lives. And again, just be encouraged by the great cloud of witnesses.
You brought up Job. Before we
Yeah.
go on, I just one of the other things that, as I digging through this stuff, we see in Job, you brought it up, there are some bad actors in the story, right? And one primary that people think of is Satan. And he's this mega powerful archangel, right? So top tier.
Yeah.
But he's restrained.
Yeah.
Like he can't do anything unless God gives him permission to do it. We don't often think about him that way.
Yeah.
Right? We kind of see him as this rogue agent just causing chaos wherever he wants. Like
Right.
just rampaging through the earth, causing absolute chaos, just absolutely destroying everything that he can. And this is helpful, I think, when we understand that in Job's life, he couldn't do anything God didn't allow. When we look at our culture just collapsing around us, we can clearly see behind the various ideas. These things always start out as ideas, right? Communism started out as an idea. Next thing you know, you have millions and millions of people not only dead from bloodshed, but starvation. So these things start out as ideas. What's happening in our culture starts out as ideas. Culture's falling apart. But we have to understand that this only happens by the permission of God.
Right.
These aren't accidents. God's not trying to do better and failing.
Right.
This is all unfolding according to God's plan.
Yep.
Also, in the Job scenario you brought up, they're human actors.
Yeah.
The human actors,
The Chaldeans.
they only
the
act.
the Sabians, is that what they're called?
The Chaldeans for sure. Yeah. They kill.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, there's a lot.
They steal
and
stuff.
kill.
They're killing all the servants.
Yeah. They're only allowed to do that because God allows it to happen.
Right. Yeah.
And people go, look at your God. Like, why would he do this to someone? Job is a righteous man. Like he's before any of this happens, he's serving the Lord, offering sacrifices. He's a good man.
Yeah.
But again, it comes down to what you think is the main good.
Right.
What do you think is the main good in this world? To live just a happy, peaceful life? Because the end of the story, and it's often overlooked, the end of the story, Job says these words, I had heard of you in the hearing, but now I see you. Or I know you. Right? So at the end of the story, my argument is Job gets something he couldn't get apart from the suffering. That's to actually see God and know him in a way that he couldn't know before. And the reason people don't like that is because people don't think God is worth that.
Yeah.
They'd rather have their family. They'd rather have their business. They'd rather have their money. They'd rather have no suffering than to know God. That type of thing that happens,
which is exactly what the devil is trying to
That's
do.
what he's trying to do.
That's what he wants to do. He wants Job to want all this other stuff over God.
Yes. Yeah.
He doesn't want him to. He doesn't want him to see God as the supreme treasure.
Yeah. Job says, "I know that you can do all things, and that no purpose of yours can be thwarted."
Right.
This is the end. Who is this that hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore I have uttered what I did not understand, things too wonderful for me which I did not know. Hear and I will speak. I will question you, and you make it known to me. I heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eyes see you.
Yeah.
If people could just get a taste of what it be like to actually know God, even beyond like how we know him now, like there are different degrees, I think, of knowing God. People who have gone through suffering and been ministered to directly, because I believe that the Holy Spirit is real, and I think some people who have gone through suffering, they know God better than we do.
Yeah.
Like there are Christians in parts of this world that have endured terrible things, unspeakable things. They don't have any theology training. They don't get to read all these books we read. Maybe they have some books of the Bible they can read, but they know God better than we do in a real experiential way. And that's
C.S. Lewis said that pain is God's megaphone.
Yeah. It's true. Yep. So, well, let's go on to the third point, or we're going to go on this podcast for like 2 or 3 hours. How about that?
Go back and watch the episodes on the problem of evil and suffering.
Yeah.
Right.
It's been a while. So the third point, we need to remember, and I can't remember if I caught this whole thing because I was, had children with me.
I saw you out of the corner of my eye. I'd see every once in a while lean over.
Yeah.
Probably that wasn't as distracted as my own kid being loud and having to be
Oh, while you were preaching?
dragged out. Yeah.
And that's fun, right?
Yeah. It's all about discipline, right? It's all about discipline.
George, one day,
my wife was having the discipline.
One day,
yesterday.
George, you're going to look down and you're going to wish that you could see it again.
Yeah. Well, some of it.
Yeah. Take my word for it, my friend. Take my word for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of my favorite memories from preaching is well, it wasn't preaching, but it was like either right before or right after the scripture reading. Julia having to drag Phineas out when he was like 2, maybe 3, and him screaming, "I'm pooping!" It was at a quiet part in the service. Yeah, I'm pooping. Yeah.
Oh,
It's just life.
yeah.
It's just life.
So the third thing to remember is that this discipline is coming from a loving father. And this is the one I think you worried about as you were preparing the sermon.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So your suffering, he says, is discipline. And it's discipline because God loves you. And that can be hard for us to accept, I think, sometimes, that the pain that I'm experiencing, the trials and the pressures and temptations that might be causing me to think, well, it might be better if I just wasn't a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can compromise to fit in. Those things are actually God disciplining you because he loves you. And he disciplines his children.
Right. This is a hard one, as you said. You were trying to be a good pastor and try to get into the shoes of perhaps people that could be sitting out listening, or maybe even those that would listen online, because a lot of people have never experienced having a father who does discipline them, but is actually because he loves them.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a culture where there's a bunch of absent fathers. There's a lot of passive fathers that don't discipline their kids. They just, I've been working, I come home, I don't want to deal with it.
Well, a lot of people view God like that anyway.
Yeah.
Like, God's busy running the universe,
Right,
and he loves us, so he lets us do what we want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Or, we talked about just abuse that might be disguised as discipline.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, trying to communicate correctly what this passage is saying.
Yeah.
And really the heart of it is found in verse 7. So he quotes Proverbs 3 verses 11 and 12, but verse 7, that kind of gets at the point of it. And again, I don't like the way that the ESV translated it, but that's why we have different translations, right? We can compare the different translations. The ESV says, "It is for discipline that you have to endure." I don't know. For me, that I don't quite grasp what that says. But again, that's an indicative statement. It's just a description. But the Greek grammar could be translated as an imperative, as a command, and I think that's better. because again, the context of the book, the reason why he's writing it is not because they're enduring the way that they should. They need to be told what to do. And so I think the Christian Standard Bible and the NIV get it right. The Christian Standard Bible says, "Endure suffering as discipline." So it's a command. Endure suffering. The NIV has hardship. Endure hardship as discipline.
Oh.
So have the right perspective on your suffering.
Right.
Endure it because it's actually discipline.
Mm-hmm.
You've been kind of you're slipping. You're being tempted to leave because you're not enduring suffering as discipline. You're enduring suffering as just suffering. It's just
Right.
pain.
Right.
But if you have a right perspective and understand that your suffering is actually from God's sovereign, loving, fatherly hand, and it's for your discipline, that perspective will change the way that you
Right.
you actually go through it.
Right.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's really the point of this part.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I can identify with this on a couple levels. First off, I had a good father who disciplined me. And I know not everyone had that, but when I look back at raising, like, I have strong-willed children. And we had someone tell us when Drake was very young, because he was a challenge, that being this strong, being that strong-willed, which in the beginning comes out as opposition toward authority.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? It can go one of two ways. If disciplined properly, those people can grow up to be good leaders, like incredibly productive adults. If it goes bad, then they become like criminals.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
So there's tremendous potential for that. So, disciplining him was a challenge, as is Evangeline. Brooke was easy. It's like God knew, like, we need a break.
Need a
here.
break.
We need to recover. It's going to take us about 12 years to recover before we're ready for it again. But here it is, second time, Evangeline. So we discipline them, and they, at the time they don't enjoy it, they don't like it, they rebel against it. I had Drake gritted his teeth at me one time and clenched his fist. I think I've said that before. I've told you before. I probably even said it on this podcast. I said, Drake, you're like a wild horse. I had a day off for the Army, right?
Uh-huh.
And spanking him didn't work.
Yeah.
Because he was too old and not going to like beat my child.
Yeah.
So we're beyond that phase. So I was like, Drake, I don't have anything to do today. Like I'm gonna sit here with you like the whole day until you submit. So go back in the corner. and I said, you're like a wild horse. I'm gonna break you today. And he turns around, he gritted his teeth at me. I think he might have been 4 years old, maybe 3. I think he was 3. He said, "You'll never break me." Clenched his teeth and like had his hands fist like he was gonna punch me. So I just grabbed my coffee and sat down in my chair. I said, "All right, we'll see about that.
Yeah.
We'll see who gives in first. Go back to the corner." And eventually, he had to work through it. He became a very great kid, great child.
Yeah.
But just think, like, if I didn't love him, I'd be like, whatever. Here's some Jolly Ranchers. Go leave me alone. You know what I mean?
Right.
Go terrorize the neighborhood.
Uh-huh.
Because people don't love their children, don't discipline them.
Well, and this is where I could have chased this. Like there's some things we can think about in this passage that aren't really the purpose of the passage. There's some application for us as parents that we can see in this passage as we look at how God disciplines. But I didn't want to spend a lot of time in the sermon because that's not the application that he's trying to make. He's not trying to teach us how to be good parents. He's trying to show how God is a good father.
He's simply assuming a good father would discipline their children.
So some things that we see in the scripture is that the Bible is very clear that fathers especially are supposed to discipline their children. Right? And we see it all throughout Proverbs that we're not. Let me
All right.
read it. I mean, whoever spares the rod hates his son. But he who loves him is diligent to discipline him.
Yeah.
Discipline your son, for there is hope. Do not set your heart on putting him to death. I think that's alluding to the law in Deuteronomy, that if you have this wild, insubordinate drunkard son that won't submit to his parents, he's supposed to be stoned to death. No, this isn't a little kid. This is like a grown adult, right? Probably more like an older teenager who's just like a hooligan. It's the death penalty. Discipline your son when he's young, so that he doesn't get put to death. Right? Folly is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline drives it far from him. Do not withhold discipline from a child. If you strike him with a rod, he will not die. That shows us that this is not abuse. Like, this isn't just wailing on him. But also is, if you spank your kid, he's not going to die. Like this isn't going to kill him.
Yeah, you've got, if you discipline your children while they're young, then you'll get to enjoy them as teenagers.
Right.
That's been my experience.
Yeah.
If you don't, my observation is you're not going to enjoy them as teenagers. It's going to be miserable.
Yeah. So Christians, and again, this isn't a suggestion. Like, the Bible commands parents, discipline your kids. You're supposed to do it. The second thing is to remember that discipline is not always punitive.
Right.
And we need to remember this also in this passage, that these Christians aren't being disciplined because of any particular sin.
Right.
This isn't suffering as a consequence of something that they've done wrong.
Right.
It's actually to keep them from sinning. That's what the discipline is for. And that's a lot of the discipline that a parent is supposed to.
Probably the majority.
Probably, yeah. That we're not just trying to punish because of sin, but we're trying to instruct so that you won't, so you won't sin. Right. And the word that's translated here as discipline. It's actually translated in 2 Timothy chapter 3 verse 16 as training.
Right.
So it carries the idea of instruction. Ephesians 6:4, fathers, you're supposed to raise your children in the discipline and the instruction of the Lord. In other words, you're supposed to teach them how to follow Jesus.
Right.
And so I don't just discipline my kids when they do something wrong. I'm trying to teach them how to do things that are right.
Right.
Especially the boys, right? Like, here's how you talk to a man.
Right.
Look him in the eye. Like, don't give him a limp wristed handshake. Like, grip his hand. Really trying to work on don't interrupt adults when they're talking.
Right.
Kids are really bad about that. We're still working on that. I mean, even yesterday, Julia and I were talking in the living room, and Josiah comes up and starts talking to me. I'm like, you have to stop. We're talking.
Right.
And then instead of stopping, he starts whispering. Like, that's what I'm trying to get. No, like, you don't, like your parents are talking, you wait your turn.
Yeah.
That's discipline, right? That's and it's not you're interrupting, go stand in a corner. It's like, no, this is how you interact with adults. Like, if an adult is speaking, you're the child, you wait. Things like that. That's discipline, right? And God does that. God does that. He's this, and again, he tells them, quoting Proverbs, don't. There's two ways to respond that are negative. Don't regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, but also don't grow weary. Don't grow weary, and you can go too far on one side or the other. You can act like this is dumb. You can be, you're never going to break me,
right?
And treating discipline as if it's not necessary, or this is stupid, or not taking lessons from it. Or you can become discouraged and you can think, he doesn't love me. and he doesn't want them to grow weary. He wants them to know that God is doing this because he loves his children.
Right.
Like a good father who disciplines his son, God is a good father who lovingly disciplines his children. And we know that because this is how he treated Jesus. And that's something that maybe people don't think about.
Right.
That God actually, that Jesus experienced discipline in the days of his flesh. So, Hebrews 5:8, although he was a son, he learned obedience through the things he suffered.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a little bit of a challenge for people to think through if they're not used to thinking in terms of the incarnation
Mm-hmm.
or the Trinity. Like as the eternal Son of God, Jesus is perfect, but as the incarnate one, as the one who takes on human flesh and he's born and he grows up, he learns obedience. Not that he ever sinned. You see, like the
Right,
you see, like the tightrope we have to walk.
Right.
Like we have to be very specific. We have to be very precise. He didn't sin, but as a man, he did have to. We've talked about he didn't just go into God mode
Mm-hmm.
when things got hard. He had to walk. He had to live by faith.
Mm-hmm.
He had to believe and obey God's word. He had to depend upon the power of the Holy Spirit. He had to obey God even when it was hard.
Yeah.
I was thinking our scripture reading in the church service was it ended with his family thinking that he was crazy, and so they were going to come and take him home. They were going to come and seize him, I think is what the language Mark uses. That's rejection by your family
Right.
that Jesus experienced.
Mm.
And Jesus had to learn to trust God through the discipline as he was being rejected by his own family.
Mm-hmm.
And so if Jesus learned obedience all the way to the point of death on a cross, then we also should submit to God's discipline because he loves Jesus. Like he is his only begotten beloved son. If he disciplines Jesus, he's definitely going to discipline us, right?
Yes.
So we need to submit to God's discipline because he loves us.
Yeah.
And the flip side is those he doesn't discipline are illegitimate children.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
That's where you need to worry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The you need to start examining your life if you don't experience discipline.
Yeah. Good. Fourth point. Remember that your suffering has meaning. It can be very difficult. As I said, you can't see it in the time as the suffering is going on. You do not have the perspective to see that, and it is many times it's not for maybe years later that you could even look back and see it.
We may never, like you were talking about.
Yeah.
Naomi.
Uh-huh.
Like she didn't see the end results. We can think of John the Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
John the Baptist didn't see the end results.
Mm-hmm.
He was left in prison until they killed him.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, but we see here that suffering does have a meaning, and this has to follow God being sovereign. If God's not sovereign over our suffering, then it doesn't have a meaning. If our suffering isn't discipline from God who loves us, then it's not going to have a meaning either.
Mm-hmm.
So it all follows that if this is true, God is sovereign. If it's true that our suffering is actually discipline because God loves us, then he's disciplining us for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And because he's sovereign, it will happen.
Mm-hmm.
It will be accomplished. And so verses 9 and 10, we have this compare and contrast between our earthly fathers and the Father of spirits. And what that means is he's just setting up, here's literally fleshly fathers and the Father of probably our spirits. So he's not trying to say more than what it, just setting up this contrast that we have earthly fathers, we have our heavenly Father. And if we respect our earthly fathers as they discipline us, then we should also honor God, who's our heavenly Father. Our earthly fathers, they discipline us for a short time. There's a limit to what we as earthly fathers can do for our kids. They grow up and they move out, and the dynamic changes. Right? They're not under our house anymore,
Right.
Our roof, and so we don't have that same. There's going to be holes. There's going to be gaps where maybe we didn't discipline the way that we should. Maybe there's something that we failed to get across to them. That's not true for God. That our earthly fathers discipline us for a short time, but He disciplines us really our entire lives, and He will accomplish what He sets out to
Right.
do. They discipline as seem best to them. That implies that there's failure, that there's weakness, right? I know that there's been times that I haven't. It's hard to discipline your kids, right?
Right.
Like that's not an easy thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to be lazy and apathetic because, well, I've been working all day. I don't want to do anything else. It's also easy to discipline out of anger. I mean, there's a lot of things that we could think about here, as earthly fathers. Like, how are we supposed to discipline? Why are we disciplining? Are we disciplining because you're bothering me? Kids acting like a fool in a store, and we're not really disciplining because we love them. We're disciplining them because they're embarrassing us, and we don't want them to embarrass us anymore. There's wrong ways for us to discipline. Am I heavy on the punishment side, but I'm not communicating the gospel?
Yeah.
Like, am I pointing them to Christ? Am I just trying to get them to behave, or do I want to communicate to them the reason why you're doing this is because you're a sinner and you're rebelling against God, and you need to trust in Christ.
Right.
So there's a lot of pitfalls.
Right. Yeah.
We do the best that we can.
Right.
But God always disciplines us for our good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty encouraging, right? I mean, again, it's God is sovereign, right? Again, not everyone has good dads. Not everyone had a dad that was around. But not true with God. God will always be there. He'll never leave us. He won't fail us. He works in our lives to discipline us, and He's wise, and He's good, and he's loving, and so the way that He disciplines will always be good, and the result will be our good. And that good is spelled out in verse 10.
Yeah.
That we may share His holiness.
Yeah.
And that's really good, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Right.
I think that's parallel to Romans 8:28 and 29.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the same idea that those He foreknew, He called, or He predestined. Those He predestined, He called. He justified, He glorified. He is the purpose is that we might be conformed to the image of His Son, so that Christ might be the firstborn among many brethren.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's the same idea that's going on here in
Right.
verse 10, that He disciplines us for our good, that we may share in His holiness.
Right.
That means that we'll become like Christ,
Uh-huh.
that we'll be conformed into Christ likeness.
Right.
And this is really amazing. I mean, we hear it so often that, again, this is stuff that we hear and we think about so often that we can often just lose sight of how amazing it is that we were enemies of God. We were estranged from God. And God sent his perfect son, who was always obedient to him, to die for us, the people who always rebelled, so that we might be adopted into his family
Right.
and be sons.
Yeah. We can think about this incorrectly too, because there's a level of this that is beyond our, I think, our ability to even grasp, that's captured by Peter in 2 Peter 1:4. We think of conform to Christ as like upping up different levels to where we're holy to various degrees, we're leaving sin to various degrees, but we fail to realize that one day this will actually be complete and we will actually become like Christ
Yeah.
in perfect holiness.
Yeah, you want to read that 2 Peter part?
Yeah,
There's no way I was going to bring that up in this already lengthy sermon.
Okay.
That's because that's a great verse.
Well, I'll start in verse 3. His divine power has granted to us all things that pertain to life and godliness through the knowledge of him who called us to his own glory and excellence, by which he has granted to us his precious and very great promises, so that through them you may become partakers of the divine nature, having escaped from the corruption that is in the world because of sinful desires.
Yeah, you might become partakers of the divine nature.
Yeah.
That's heavy stuff.
Right.
It really
And
is.
it isn't saying that we become a god.
Right.
But there is something beyond it's something more human than we can experience in this world.
1 John 3 says that when he comes, we will be made like him because we will see him as he is.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the very sight of Christ will make us like him.
And if we're uncomfortable with it, I mean, the Bible clearly says it.
Yeah.
Become partakers of the divine nature. That's only possible, I would say, if the incarnation takes place.
Yeah.
Because God can take on human nature onto himself.
Yeah.
Right? We can never take God nature onto our own self by our own doing.
Mm-hmm.
But in this mysterious verse, we have this great promise that we're going to transcend our reality as we know it. Everybody's looking for this kind of like transcending or this ascension.
Enlightenment.
I found this guy, I screen recorded some of it. I'll bring it out on a Free For All Friday, but he believes that he has merged with a alien entity.
Okay.
And he has this, like, there were tons of people on this like live feed. And they're like, yeah, it was wild stuff, man. But I'm not doubting that he did. I just know that it was a demon. But like people are searching for this way to transcend this reality.
Right.
That's already promised to you in Christ. That you will leave this world and its sinful desires, and you'll enter another reality. And not just a floaty around, we've talked about this before, the spiritual reality. We're talking about a real physical reality where you become
glorified bodies.
What it means to be a true human that is in communion with God, such that Peter can say you become a partaker of the divine nature.
Yeah.
There is the creature distinction,
as
this is something granted to the creature.
Right.
But that should blow your mind.
Yeah.
That's worth enduring suffering for.
That really is I mean, we could have just taken verse 10 and just parked on it for an hour yesterday. If this is the goal, and it has to, and God in his wisdom, right? Like God has ordained that we will get here, but it comes through suffering. Then as Christians, we should just say, bring it on, like whatever it takes. Like if this is what it takes, if God is sovereign and he knows in his sovereignty and his wisdom that this is how we get to this goal, then we should have a proper perspective on our suffering and say, whatever it takes, whatever I have to go through, whatever the sorrows and the pain and the rejection and even shedding blood, if it gets me to this goal, then I will do it. And I will do it with rejoicing.
Yeah. That's
But
good.
but we often we don't have that goal in our mind. I mean, a runner. We talked about this last week. That survey. The best part of running, 78% said the finish line, like crossing the finish line.
Right.
So that helps them to keep going. You have the goal in mind. If we keep this goal in mind, that we're going to share in God's holiness, then we will run the race with endurance.
Yeah.
Right?
Good. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, good stuff. Well, I think it's time that we shut it down. Thanks
All
for joining us today for our Text Driven Tuesday. And we'll see if we're back Friday or not. I'm not sure yet if we're going to make it, but we may be. We may be back for all Friday. If this has been a blessing to you, please maybe write us a review and share this with your friends. It's our hope that this helps you to be more and more conformed to Christ. That is the goal, as you can see from even this passage, that we would be becoming more and more like our Savior. So thanks for joining us today. Hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.